My pleasure and honor to present today the debate on Austrian economics between two prominent members of our economics department. I'm sure everybody is familiar with the topic, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So we'll just get started.
I'd just like to thank the Economics Club for setting this up. It's been a lot of work. Now, just to begin with, Peter Boettke and I agree about so many things in economics, you may wonder what the point of a debate between us is in the first place. And so just to begin with some of the things that we agree on, for one thing, see, we're in almost perfect agreement about desirable economic policy. There is a stereotype about economics that they are all doctrinaire free marketeers. Stereotype is false, right? But in this case, we are the exceptions to the rule because it is actually true about us. Right? Both of us would like to see sweeping libertarian reforms. So in any case, very often when you hear people arguing about seemingly incomprehensible abstract topics, it is actually a mask for a political disagreement. That's not true here. Right? That is not true here. We agree so much about political philosophy that it would be rather odd for this to actually be a covert philosophical or a political philosophical discussion. Right, now, another thing that Pete and I agree about is that the economics profession grossly overrates the value of mathematical modeling and econometrics. So I say that we can agree about this as well. Right, now, I think both of us could say that they have their uses, right? But nevertheless, that these techniques have wound up becoming an end in themselves. Right, where it's much more important to be a good mathematical modeler, to be good at econometrics, than to have anything much to say about economics. Right? And moreover, they've crowded out a lot of other valuable techniques. Right? So they've crowded out economic history, surveys, interviews, introspection. Right? So Pete and I can agree about that. Right? Now, and last but not least, something else that Pete and I agree about is that most of our fellow economists are boring. We can, well, Pete may not be so comfortable saying it, but I know that he believes it. So I'd say that you have thousands of PhDs spending their lives working on questions where even if they got the answer, who would really care? You can take a look at top journals in economics. There's only a small fraction of the questions where, once they were answered, you would feel like you would actually learn something important about the world. It does take great technical ability to get into the best journals. However, it often does not take any great insight about the world or the economy in order to do so. All right, so if we can agree on these three things, what is left? Right, what is there actually left to dispute? So the answer may be a little bit hard to believe, right, but I assure you that it's true. The answer is that we disagree about certain abstract questions in basic economic theory, which again may be a little puzzling. Well, that is actually the disagreement. Right, it is none of these other things. Now, essentially, in each of these cases, I maintain that the orthodox neoclassical position, correctly understood, right, is correct, and that the Austrian critics are wrong. Right, now, before I begin, I should say that Austrians don't just disagree with me, they also disagree with each other. Right, so I'm going to have to apologize in advance to all of the anti-Boettke Austrians out there, right, because I'm going to be attacking a position I refer to as the Austrian view. You may substitute that in your mind for Boettke's Austrian view. If you feel that your own views have not been in any way touched, but you merely want to say that Boettke is not the true Austrian, I will let you fight that out among yourselves. So I will be just criticizing the Boettke version of Austrian economics. Let's focus on him. Right, now this is a bit of a challenge because at least sometimes Pete will describe Austrian economics in such a way that's so vague that almost anyone could be an Austrian economist. Right.
This is good.
Yeah. So for example, Pete will tell you that Austrians are subjectivists. Right, and what does subjectivists believe? Subjectivists believe that values and beliefs are in the minds of human beings. In contrast to other people who think that beliefs and values are in, say, camcorders, or something like that. Okay, now, my point here is that every mainstream textbook will say exactly the same thing, that yes, beliefs and values are in the minds of individuals. Right, now, Boettke does have a response to this. Right, he's going to tell you, yes, well, yeah, it's true, mainstream economists are subjectivists. However, we are radical subjectivists. Right, we are radical subjectivists. Right, now, in all honesty, I have to say I'm still very puzzled as to what the difference is. The only one that I've seen empirically is that radical subjectivists use the word subjectivism a lot, and regular subjectivists do not. Right? So regular subjectivists take it for granted that beliefs and values are in the minds of individuals, and radical subjectivists are always telling you, hey, these beliefs and values are in the minds of individuals. Okay, so in any case, we can talk about that more in the Q&A, right? But at least when Boettke says things like this, it's fairly hard to criticize in the sense that he's saying things are Austrian that almost all economists think. Right? But there is one big area where Boettke defends specific views that most other economists, and that includes me, do not accept. Right? And that area is information economics. The area is information economics. Right now, if you go to your very simplest neoclassical models from the textbook, they'll make an assumption that would seem bizarre correctly to any normal person. The assumption is everyone has perfect knowledge of the world. Right now, is there anyone here who has perfect knowledge of the world? Alex. Right, so in any case, this seems like a very odd assumption to make, right, or a rather extreme one. Right now, once economists begin realizing that there's a problem with this, and I'd say they always knew there was a problem with it, rather it was used as a simplifying assumption, but once they noticed that they should think about this and think this through to a greater extent, a neoclassical economist said, well, we can resolve this issue using probability theory. We can resolve this issue using probability theory. Right? So what we're going to assume is that people implicitly assign probabilities, right, or degrees of confidence, probabilities or degrees of confidence to different events. Right? And these probabilities range from a probability of 0, right, which in ordinary language is impossible. If there's any math major in the room, you'll know I've said something slightly wrong, but in any case, in common sense terms, an event with a probability of 0 is impossible, and on the other hand, an event with a probability of 1 is certain, and your degree of confidence can range from 0 to 1. Right now, the standard neoclassical theory also assumes that people take those actions which, given their beliefs, seem like the most sensible gamble to make. Right? So you can take an action not knowing whether anything will work out. Right? In fact, say if you've ever applied to graduate school or done interviewing, right, you will realize that none of this is guaranteed. Right? Nevertheless, this does not mean that there aren't some courses of action that are more sensible than others. Right? For example, if you were looking for a job, you could lie around in bed all day, hoping that someone will give you a call. However, that is not likely to be the most sensible way of doing things. Said usually you're better off if you get out of bed, usually but not always. Maybe you missed the one crucial call, which would have been the best job of your life because you were out foolishly interviewing, right? But that would be unusual. Right now, probability theory is the foundation for search theory, right? Which is essentially the basic economic theory of action under uncertainty. And it winds up concluding, to make a long story short, that individuals wind up balancing expected marginal benefits against expected marginal costs. Right? So if you go to the simple part of the textbook with perfect knowledge, they'll say people balance marginal benefits against marginal costs. Once you add an uncertainty, we usually wind up saying essentially that people balance expected marginal benefits against expected marginal costs. Okay? So for example, take a deer hunter. Right? If anyone has seen the movie with Robert De Niro, right? Anyway, they hunt deer in the movie, right? And there's some efforts to go after them. Right? And as you might guess, they do not always successfully get a deer. Right? Sometimes you go out, do the best you can, even though you are a professional deer hunter. Nevertheless, you wake up in the morning early, hunt around all day, and you don't find any deer, so you come home empty-handed. Right? But nevertheless, a deer hunter can still compare the expected benefits against the expected costs of his action. Right? So a deer hunter who gets up early in the morning is more likely to bag a deer, although nevertheless, there's no guarantees in life. That's what the world of imperfect knowledge means. Right now, incidentally, there is one Austrian graduate student who will remain nameless who confessed to me that as far as he was concerned, search theory was a great guide to dating. So when he was considering exactly how much effort he should put into different avenues and various other methods, how to dress, what to say, right, he found that search theory was an excellent guide to his behavior, right, and he used it religiously. So anyway, he admitted there was some value to the neoclassical approach. Right. So now Austrian economists reject the use of search theory, at least as being an all-encompassing theory. Right now, there are some Austrians that Pete would distance himself from, like Mises and Rothbard, who essentially said that probability theory can never be used for anything interesting. That the only way you can use it is in a game of cards or a game of chance. And if you think a little bit more about it, you can't even use it there because how do you know that they're playing with a non-loaded deck? Right? There's always, how can you actually say for sure that the deck is not loaded? Right? So you can't even use probability theory to decide how to play poker because you don't know whether or not, in fact, you have a normal deck of cards. Okay, so I think that Pete and many other Austrians would say that position is actually too extreme. Right? And they'd say we want to back away from that, but still not give probability theory the whole game. We're not going to actually give away the whole show to probability theory. Right? And what he's going to say is that there's an important feature of the world that probability theory misses. Right now there is a long list of names for essentially the same thing. So I'll give you 4 synonyms.